Hey, what's up everybody out there in Learning Land? Tyler from 10thumbspro.com coming at you with another ukulele tutorial like we do every single Wednesday. Today we're talking music theory, and more specifically we're talking about the interval and basically why it's the most important thing in all of music theory. A printable version of this lesson to follow along with up here in the corner by becoming a Patreon. That means printable tabs for this lesson and all our lessons, past, future, all of that. Skype lesson 1-on-1 if interested. My email is in the description. Subscribe and ring the bell if you like this kind of content so you never miss a lesson. All right, for this one, you're going to need your ukulele, but you're also going to need your brain and your attention span for this one, all right? Trust me, if you get through this lesson, all of music and as it pertains to creating it and understanding with the ukulele is going to be a lot easier, all right? So you better bring that brain because you're going to need it today. Music is composed of three different elements. The three elements you have are, first, rhythm. Rhythm would be your strum pattern. If you want to learn more about rhythm is the only element of the three that we're not covering today. I'll put a link in the notes right now. Go ahead and click that. It's called How to Strum Better, and it talks about counting music. If you can count music, you understand rhythm. The other two elements are harmony, and a harmony is the chords. And melody. And melody is the part that your voice often sings, but it doesn't have to be. Melody is the lead. By understanding intervals, you understand how melody and harmony work, and you understand how to create it, manipulate it, manage it, and understand it. So the first thing you have to ask, or the first thing you have to understand, is what is an interval? An interval is a unit of measurement to measure the distance between two notes, between note A and note B. Well, I shouldn't say note in A and B because there are notes A and B. Any two particular notes. The same way kilograms or pounds measure weight, the same way decibels measure volume, the same way miles and feet measure distance, the interval measures the distance between two notes. For example, between the C note and the F note, you have a fourth. The F note would be considered a fourth interval to the C. In Western music, we have 12 notes. That means at the octave, the note repeats itself. So if you play an open C on the C string, and you play the 12th fret of the C string, you have another C note. C note, C note. So that means we have 12 notes. C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, C. So no sharps or no flats between the E and the F and between the B and the C. We can also give each of these intervals. Now, another thing that's important to know about intervals is that they move. An interval is created relative to the root. So the root note is your tonal center. What do I mean by that? If you are selecting a key, the root note is the key note, and it functions as the sun. And all the other notes rotate around that. But once you choose your root note, that is the seed of the musical plant. That is the sun of your musical universe. That is the wind beneath my wings. It is the patty of your musical hamburger. It is the Jerry Seinfeld of your musical Seinfeld. The tonal center is the everything. Everything revolves around that. It is the what? Why don't you leave your analogy in the comments? So once you've selected your key, you select your root note. For this particular exercise, we're going to be working in the key of C, meaning all of our intervals are going to be relative to the key of C. That's going to make a little more sense as we move along. So having decided that our key is C, we can measure the intervals relative to the key of C. Now you're probably thinking 12 notes. We have 12 intervals, and this is true, but they're not numbered 1 through 12. Why is that? I'm not quite sure. It makes it a little more tricky, but we're gonna have to take a look at that. From the C to the C sharp is what's known as a flat second. That sound always makes me think of the movie Jaws. From the C to the D note, you have the second interval. This is also referred to as the major second, but you will see it just written as a 2. C to D. From the C to the E flat, you have what's known as a flat third or a minor third. From the C to the E, you have what's known as a major third or a third interval. C to F is a fourth interval. C to F sharp or G flat, we'll call it a G flat. We'll do everything flat. C to G flat, this is the flat fifth. This interval is also known as the Devil's Fifth and was actually banned from church music. It's also the interval that you add to the minor pentatonic scale to make it the blues scale. And that's why intervals are important. Knowing what intervals do what is how you create scales and chords. But we're going to get to that after we learn them all. C to G is your fifth interval. C to A flat is your flat sixth, also known as the augmented fifth. C to A is your sixth interval, a very country sound, very popular in country music. The sixth interval. C to the B flat. C to B flat is the flat seventh, the minor seventh. This is what makes a C chord a C7. This is very, very common in blues music, also with minor seven chords. It's known as the dominant seventh, flat seventh. Think Mixolydian. C to the B note is the seventh. Adding the seventh to a C chord makes a C major seven. Very jazzy, spacey sound. Like David Bowie would use these chords to take you to outer space. And then the C to the C, we have the octave 8. You'll also see that written as the eighth. So those are the 12 intervals. Now you will also see, if you were to continue up the list, you will see some of these intervals again. For example, C to D, but if I play this D up here, that's also written as the ninth interval. Well, that's just 2 plus 8, okay? So for right now, we're just gonna focus on 1 through 8 in the chart, in the PDF. I will have the 8 ninths and the 13ths as well. But just know that that is basically just going through and adding 8 to the number, right? So you have your 2. Well, once you get to 8, then it goes 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, so now that we know what intervals are, what do we use them for? Intervals are the building blocks of both scales and chords. For example, the major scale is root, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. Nice and easy to remember. So I start with my C, and I build it. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Octave, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, root. So by knowing the intervals used to create the major scale, I can pick out any note that I want, E note, and I can use the intervals to create the E major scale. E major, E, second, F sharp, third, G sharp, fourth, the A note, fifth, B, sixth, C sharp, the D sharp as the seventh, and then the E as the octave. Applying this concept of intervals, I've created the E major scale. So every scale has a formula. For example, the Mixolydian mode is the same, except the seventh becomes the flat seventh or the minor seventh. So the Mixolydian mode is the root, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, flat seventh root. C, root, D, second, E, third, F, fourth, G, fifth, A, sixth, B flat, flat seventh, C, the C Mixolydian. C Mixolydian. We want to know how to make the C minor scale. With a C minor scale, there's 3 different types of minor scales. But for example, the most common minor scale, you have a flat third and a flat seventh. So C minor would be C, root, or a root C note, second D note, E flat, flat third, F fourth, fifth is the G, sixth is our E, B flat, flat seventh, and then our C is our octave. There you have the C minor scale. Intervals are also the building blocks of chords, which is really interesting. The C major chord is built with a root, major third, and a fifth. Root, C, major third, E, fifth, G. C, E, G. C arpeggio, or I play them all at the same time. C, E, G. Essentially, too, that's how melody and harmony work. The melody weaves through the chords. So by playing this chord, I know it's my root, C, fourth, E, fifth, G note. And if I'm playing that as harmony, my melody can really land on those chord notes or accentuate those chord notes so my melody and my harmony stick together. Now, I didn't only play chord tones because only playing chord tones would sound a little boring, but I emphasized chord tones and I played more chord tones. That's why that particular melody sounded good over that particular chord. Having said that, again, it's important to know that you don't only want to play chord tones, you want to mix it up. Just know that your melody and your harmony are going to come together and sound sweeter the more you emphasize your chord tones. I want to make it a C7. Okay, well, a C7 is root, major third, fifth, flat seventh. C, E, G, B flat. Root, third, fifth, flat seventh, minor seventh. C, E, G, B flat. The pentatonic scale is pretty interesting because the pentatonic scale is penta meaning 5, actually only 5 notes. And what they did is they removed the B and they removed, which is our major seventh, our 7th interval, and the F, which is our 4th interval. Why is that? Because the scale C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, between E and F is only a half step, and between B and C is only a half step. So by removing the B and the F, C, D, E, G, A, C, we have no notes that are only half steps, making the pentatonic great for improvisation because you can't really hit a bad note. A lot of times a sour sound would be, for example, if you're playing a C chord, but you're singing or playing an F note, because the F note and the E note are only 1 note apart. And that's when you have the most dissonance or the most discord or the tensest sound. When what you're playing is C, E, G, but what you're singing is a D sharp, an F, or a B, because those are only 1 note apart from the note that you're playing, and that creates the most sour sound that your ear does not like. That's why the pentatonic scale is so forgiving. All chords have a formula that you can follow. For example, the C suspended 2 is a chord that maybe you play less, but what it did is it pushed the 3rd interval, the E, suspended it to the 2nd, making it C, D, and G. C, D, G. Okay, so understanding these formulas, that's how you create all these chords. There's a great website called looknohands.com where you can go to the piano room and click chord, or you can click scale, and when you do that, at the very bottom it will have all the intervals. Committing these interval formulas to memory will help you construct the scales and the chords. It will also help you construct melody as well. Each interval also has its own flavor to keep in mind. Explore them, learning what each interval sounds like, learning how to create chords with them, and learning how to create melody with them will make you a master of both improvisation and of composition. Understanding, for example, if I'm in the key of C and my chord progression goes C, G, D minor, understanding the intervals that can navigate that chord is going to make my melody stick to the chord progression and sound much more professional as well. Outside of rhythm, all harmony and all melody comes down to understanding your intervals. Even though this book was made for guitars, this is also another great source because it has all the interval makeups for all the chords as well. When writing your songs, you'll see that each chord composed of each interval, also the same way that each interval has a different vibe, each chord has a different vibe too. And experimenting with these suspended chords, these augmented chords, etc. can really take your chord progression to the next level as well. Okay, so lastly, before we move on, let's talk a little bit about how this pertains to composition. Well, when you choose the key you're in, C Mixolydian, C Dorian, any mode, C major, resolution happens on the C note, meaning the C note is what you want your melody to finish on. Your melody will not sound complete and it will not sound finished if it doesn't finish on a C note. Each note within that scale too also has varying degrees of stability. Some notes feel resolved, more resolved than others. Some notes feel like they want to move. The root, third, and fifth feel stable. The second and the sixth feel semi-stable. And the fourth and the seventh feel unstable. This is the major scale. Knowing that, you can create melodies that are interesting. For example, you don't want everything to be stable. You don't want everything to be safe. Maybe I will compose a melody where the first phrase finishes on the fourth interval, the second phrase finishes on the second, and the third phrase finishes on the root. Understanding the stability of those intervals and the sound of each interval will help you create interesting melodies and dynamic phrasing. Understanding that ultimately, when you finish your song, you want it to finish on a C. You have to understand intervals to understand phrasing, but phrasing is an entirely separate lesson because understanding phrasing is how you compose melodies. We did a good lesson on that already on how to write your own melodies and how to harmonize it, so I'll link those two lessons up here as well. All right, friends, that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Keep on rocking and rolling, and until next time, 10thumbspro.com. Love, peace, and chicken grease, my friends. We'll catch you next Wednesday or next Saturday for our next ukulele lesson. I know this one was heavy. Understanding this stuff will make you a better musician. All right, until next time, rock and roll. Have a lovely day.